Hey, Night Watcher. I see you clutching that phone like it's a candle in a drafty corridor. Before we nudge one crumb of medieval honey cake toward your sleepy imagination, give that like button a polite tap, subscribe if the thought of dozing off to dusty trivia makes you smile, and drop a comment telling me and the algorithmic scribes what city and hour you're drifting in from tonight. Now wrinkle up a blanket, dim the lamp, and let's wander back to a century when dessert could be equal parts delight and suspicious pantry prank. Picture a narrow bakery lane somewhere in 14th century York. Timber frames leaning like drunk uncles, thatched roofs smelling faintly of smoke and wet straw, and, most important to your nose, the swirl of spice and soot hanging above a wood-fired oven. That swirl would tug you forward, the way a warm window display still lures you into cafes today. But peer closer at the baker's table, and you might pause. Because medieval honey cakes weren't the safe grandma-approved tea biscuits we imagine. They were alchemical experiments. Sweetened by honey, yes, kissed by saffron if you were wealthy, and occasionally, disturbingly, bulked out with something more, combustible, ashes scooped from yesterday's hearth. Let's start with the honey. Sugar, a rare jewel imported in knotted sacks from Cyprus or Sicily, priced like silken sin. Common folk turned instead to bee yards, humming just outside city walls. Monks loved bees because the church allowed honey during Lenten fasts. Beekeepers in brown habits peddled sticky combs in cloisters, chanting psalms while swatting at persistent drones. When a baker bought a jar, it came unfiltered, full of crushed wings, wax, maybe a stray ant. Strain it through linen and, presto, golden syrup with a whiff of meadow. But honey alone didn't create that golden glow in courtly pastries. It needed saffron. Those delicate crimson threads came from crocus flowers harvested at sunrise, each bloom yielding 3 stigmas no wider than a hair. English estates tried to grow it. Saffron Walden earned its very name, but much still sailed in from southern Spain in little wooden boxes. 1 ounce of saffron could cost more than a horse. Steal it, and you risked a fine heavy enough to bankrupt your family, or worse, having your ears nailed to the pillory. Yet cooks pinched it into batter anyway, because a bright yellow crumb was the medieval equivalent of flexing on Instagram. And then there were the ashes. Cheaper than wheat, cheaper than salt, because they were, after all, trash. Medieval bakers noticed that wood ash contained alkaline salts, cousins to the potash later used in early baking powders. A handful gave dough an airy lift, nudging cakes toward fluffiness a century before chemists would bottle bicarbonate dreams. Problem? Ash also tasted like licking the inside of a cold fireplace. Solution? Blanket it in honey, drown it in saffron perfume, then proclaim the final product a digestive cordial. If your lord's stomach cramped later, you blamed humoral imbalance or the peasant who fetched the eggs. Imagine you, yes you, earn a farthing as an apprentice baker named Edwy. It's pre-dawn, sky the color of watered ink. Your master grunts, "Fetch me clean ash." You shuffle to the oven pit where yesterday's beech logs collapsed into gray powder. With numb fingers you sift out nails, the odd burnt chestnut shell, maybe a forgotten scrap of parchment that once bore a tax roll. Back at the bench, he spades spoonfuls into a clay mixing bowl, humming a drinking song. When you hesitate, because you've tasted cinders after dropping a roast in the hearth, he thumps your shoulder. Ash sharpens the humor, boy, makes the gut merry. You nod, even though your gut quietly whimpers. Meanwhile, down the street, the spice merchant unlocks heavy shutters. Inside, glass jars glitter. Cinnamon sticks, real ones, not cassia. Pepper from Malabar, ginger knotted like Gome's fists, and those tiny vials of saffron. He'll weigh threads on a brass scale while customers watch, eyes wide, each tiny filament sliding like crimson sparks. He might tip in a few extra grains, customer loyalty, or sneak a sliver back into his sleeve, merchant profit. Either way, the scale wobbles like medieval trust. Back in the bakery, you drizzle honey. It oozes slower than frozen tar in cathedral winter. The fragrance is wildflower sweet at first, but then you catch notes of chamomile, clover, maybe a rotten apple that the bees fed on last August. Your master folds in wheat flour so roughly milled it still hides shards of bran big enough to scratch enamel. Flavor? Earthy. Texture? Brutal. Yet by candlelight, the batter's sunset color dazzles everyone, proof of goodness. Customers arrive by sext mid-morning when church bells clang. A reeve buys pastries for manorial accounts. A midwife buys one honey cake for strength during a night birth. A pilgrim headed to Canterbury nibbles crumbs in hope of warding off tavern fare. Nobody questions the ash. Sweetness overrules suspicion. Besides, ash is practically medicine. Medieval herbals recommended ash bark tea for gout, ash leaf poultices for snake bites. If burns your tongue, that's penance. Now, let's widen the lens. Go beyond York to Moorish Al-Andalus, where cooks perfumed honey cakes with rosewater, mastic, and, legend claims, a whisper of ground sandalwood. Venetian traders hauled these recipes north. But spice meant money, and money meant risk. Caravans crossing the Pyrenees were stalked by bandits who could smell saffron boxes hidden beneath wool. If they stole your cargo, you sued nobody. Road law favored whoever held the sharper dagger. So, bakers like your master saved spice for feast days. On lean weeks, he colored batter with carrot juice. Yes, carrot cake started life as poor man's saffron, turning dough orange in a pinch. Turn next to the feasting hall. High-born ladies nibble honey cakes shaped like fleurs de lis, embroidered with pine nuts and dusted with powdery sugar, imported, of course. Court jesters joke that sugar bleaches your humors pale like a weeping ghost. Physicians warn that too much dulcedo heats the blood, causing melancholy dreams. But nobody resists a sweet bite after boiled capon swimming in almond milk gravy. They bite, smile, and wipe sticky fingers on linen napkins. Tomorrow, the laundress curses quietly while scrubbing amber stains from cloth in icy river water. Listen to the night sounds of the town. Blacksmith hammers, a distant church choir practicing for Michaelmas, dogs wrestling over bone shards behind a tanner's shed. You, tired apprentice, sweep spilled flour. Your master locks away leftover saffron in an iron box under his cot. He trusts you, mostly, but trust falters when a few threads equal a new pair of boots. You sigh, dragging a broom so worn its bristles are skeletal. In your pocket, you've hidden a single honey cake, the tester scrap that fell from the pan. You intend to eat it under the tavern shutter later. Maybe share with the ostler's daughter, whose hair smells like peat smoke. Yet, as you take that first bite, you crunch something unexpected. Unburnt ember? The ash wasn't sifted enough. Char grit coats your molars. Still, the honey's floral note battles back. The saffron sings faintly of sun-bathed hills in Spain, and you keep chewing. Because in this world, sweetness is scarce, and a little grit is the price for a few seconds of golden comfort before bed. Scoot a little closer to your screen hearth, friend. Yes, right there. Then spare one sleepy finger tap for the like button so this tale drifts to other midnight listeners. Pop "I'm still awake" down in the comments, and if the algorithmic saints deem us worthy, they'll ring that subscribe bell like a monastery vespers gong. Now breathe in. Roasted barley, melting beeswax, and a faint whiff of candle-smoked parchment. That's the smell of tonight's journey. Last time, we left you nibbling a crumbly honey cake, half saffron sunbeam, half ash-speckled gamble. Tonight, we pick up hours before sunrise inside St. Botolph's Priory kitchen, where fasting rules and secret sweet-tooth loopholes collide like ale barrels on market day. Picture the Priory's bakery as a stone cave glowing crimson from embers. Brother Aldhelm, thick-eyebrowed, forearms dusted in flour that never quite washes off, serves double duty, monk at matins, renegade pâtissier by matinee. Officially, the rule of Saint Benedict forbids meat and excessive luxury during Lent, but Aldhelm has discovered a convenient theological escape hatch. Liquidum non frangit jejunium. Liquid does not break the fast. So he brews a batter so thin it pours like porridge, then bakes it until it just sets, arguing with a holy wink that it's basically drinkable bread. His secret booster? Saffron steeped overnight in apple cider vinegar. The acid unlocks deeper gold, bleeding sunset hues through the batter. Color alone is half the indulgence. Monks swear the tint lifts gloom, an optical pilgrimage to warmer climes. And because everything sacred needs plausible deniability, Aldhelm stirs in powdered rush ash. Medicinal, he claims, clutching a dusty copy of Hildegard of Bingen's Physica that mentions charcoal's virtue in taming turbulent humors. Charcoal, ash's holier cousin. Tonight's dough must seduce not just bellies, but politics. Bishop Godfrey will ride in tomorrow, seeking hospitality, code for pocketing tithes, to fund a new reliquary. The prior hopes to sway him into a gentler levy by gifting sweetmeats that whisper, "Generosity tastes better than greed." No one bribes quite like a pastry chef in a vow of poverty. Aldhelm hums plain chant while measuring honey. 3 ladles from a clay urn, so old its rim is ringed by teeth marks. Monks suck leftover drips during winter. Honey this year is darker. Bees foraged wild heather after the abbey's lavender beds flooded. So he balances it with a pinch of pearl sugar smuggled from Bruges inside a cask labeled candles. Smuggling sugar across Channel storms isn't cheap. The merchant demanded 2 silver pennies per pound and absolution for lying to customs clerks. The prior supplied both. Embossing molds wait on an oak table. Tiny wooden stamps carved with lilies, griffins, and the priory's own emblem, a quill-pierced heart. For Bishop Godfrey, Aldhelm selects the heart motif. Symbolism matters. Show a bishop your sweet devotion, and maybe he'll overlook the rumor you've been pawning communion wine to local physicians. True, but with charitable intent. Meanwhile, outside kitchen walls, Lent hardship hovers. Townsfolk queue for thin eel soup ladled by nuns. Children chase rats for sport and maybe supper. If you can spit a rat on a skewer by dusk, you're a hero of household protein. Yet just beyond the cloister, luxuries swirl unseen. Spice coffers jingling like tambourines. Saffron tied in pig bladders to stay dry. Little jars of rosewater from Damascus prized like relics. The medieval world is two simultaneous feasts. Scarcity for most, sensory riot for the favored. And honey cake sits at that shimmering border. Let's trail Brother Aldhelm to the dormitory where he stashes something even dearer. A battered scroll of Iberian recipes penned in Mozarabic Latin. It crossed the Pyrenees tucked inside a pilgrim's boot, payment for saving the man from infected blisters. Among almond milk stews and pomegranate syrups hides a peculiar note. Mezcla de ceniza dulce, sweet ash mixture. Moorish cooks, it says, dried orange peels in hearth ash to preserve fragrance, then pulverized the lot and stirred it into cakes. The zest masked the ash bite. The ash carried citrus oil like a perfume sachet. Aldhelm grins devilishly. Tomorrow he'll grate dried pear skins into his ash, adding local flair. Night deepens. In the scriptorium above, younger monks copy psalms by lamplight. Quills squeak. Ink smells like vinegar and iron nails. One scribe, Brother Cuthbert, scribbles a marginal doodle of a honey cake with wings, maybe a guardian pastry? Down below, Aldhelm slides sheets of batter onto stone. A hiss, a bloom of steam, and the priory fills with scents so lush you swear summer snuck in early. While cakes bake, let's roam farther. Across the channel to Paris, Rue des Marmousettes. Here, secular bakers call honey and ash cakes oublies, little forgettings. Street vendors hawk them outside Notre Dame, promising pilgrims they'll forget hunger till supper. Parisians love wordplay almost as much as sugar taxes. Royal edicts cap honey prices, yet bakers dodge ceilings by selling blessed wafers, wink nudge, said to cure toothache if chewed slowly. Medieval marketing. Back at St. Botolph's, dawn pulses violet at window slits. Bishop Godfrey arrives in a cavalcade of jingling spurs and overstuffed saddlebags. He expects cold fish and piety. Instead, he's greeted by Brother Aldhelm's platter. Honey cakes warm as freshet soil, gilded with saffron glaze, ash lifted to airy heights. Godfrey bites, braces for char, but tastes orchard sunlight and faint smoke that reminds him of childhood Twelfth Night fires. His eyes soften. By the third bite, he's negotiating down his levy for the sake of culinary virtue. Success? Nearly. One hiccup. Ash sprinkle lodged in Godfrey's throat mid-prayer, prompting a cough that echoed through the nave. Quick-thinking sacristan fetched diluted wine, technically fasting aloud. Crisis averted. Bribe holds. Meanwhile, Aldhelm's apprentice, yes, that's you, reincarnated, slyly pockets 2 brand-marked honey hearts. You sneak across Cloister Garth to the infirmary where Sister Elfreda watches over plague survivors. You break a cake, share crumb by crumb with a gaunt widow too weak to sit. Honey coats her cracked lips. Saffron sparks a color in her cheeks unseen for months. She whispers a blessing that makes you blush hotter than any oven. The rule forbids such fraternizing, but compassion often breaks rules sweeter than sugar. Later, as bells ring, you slump on a grain sack, mind fogged by sleeplessness and sugar crash. From the rafters, drooping beeswax tapers weep golden tears. Somewhere in the rafters, a bat squeaks, a reminder night is not done nosing secrets. But your secret? You kept one cake. After Compline, you'll trade it to the gardener for fresh mint sprigs. Tomorrow, Aldhelm plans honey mint lozenges. Yes, ash again, for the bishop's onward lap of parishes. Influence travels best in a pastry postle. Now drift, weary baker dreamer. Let saffron sunsets swirl behind your eyelids. Let smoky flavors mingle with Gregorian drone. We'll reconvene in the next hush of history to peek at how honey cakes turned into currency between feuding barons, why one Welsh castle banned saffron under pain of branding, and how a nun's midnight vision birthed the first medieval marzipan scandal. First, loosen your shoulders, settle back, and before the batter of tonight's tale starts to rise, tap the like as if you're lightly whisking eggs. Slide a comment that tells me your time zone and what you're snacking on. Then ring subscribe so the algorithm's kitchen timer never lets you miss a midnight serving. Ready? Good. The smoke from last night's honey cake caper has barely drifted out of the priory chimney, yet the aroma has already galloped farther than any courier. By dawn, crumbs of intrigue are being pecked up by ravens on 3 different estates, each bird trailing gossip like invisible ribbons. We awaken on a muddy cart track that snakes north through Sherwood. Rain has turned the ruts into custard, and our driver, a gnarled carter named Hob, murmurs curses that would make a gargoyle blush. Beside him sits a cedar box stamped with the quill-pierced heart emblem of St. Botolph's. It holds exactly 7 saffron ash honey hearts branded with fresh wax seals, destined for Baroness Maud de Wykley's fortress of Middlecliff. Why 7? Superstition. Odd numbers, they say, trick the devil's arithmetic. But Hob has no idea he's hauling diplomatic dynamite. Nor does he know that inside Maud's walls, saffron is a banned substance. Let's rewind. 12 winters ago, Maud's father, a crusader who fancied himself a culinary visionary, returned from Acre obsessed with spice. He taxed his serfs in saffron threads, hoarded it in pigeonhole vaults, then died choking on a lumpy custard dyed lurid orange. Local rumor blamed the spice. Saffron fever, they called it. Maud, freshly orphaned and furious, outlawed the filament outright. Any servant caught smuggling so much as a pollen grain would lose an ear, both if they'd been dipping into the jars. Her edict stuck like a burr, even after merchants begged for clemency. To Maud, saffron was poison wrapped in perfume. Now, thanks to Brother Aldhelm's sweet-tongued bribery chain, 7 saffron sweets are rattling toward her gatehouse. The priory hopes to mellow her stance in exchange for cedar for a new bell tower. Middlecliff's forest grows excellent straight-grain trunks. It also hides arrow-happy poachers who'll shoot first, sauce later. Hobbs' cart, pitched and yawing, finally clatters across the drawbridge. A steely steward lifts the lid. One whiff of golden cake sends him reeling back as if struck. "Contraband!" he spits. But famine's bitten Middlecliff. Larda's echo, gruel thins, tempers snap like frost-hardened hemp. The steward decides Maud needs cheering. He pockets the cakes beneath his cloak, strides to the sola, and presents them under a silk napkin like a hostage bouquet. Maud nibbles. Her eyes flare. They could be anger, could be delight, but she keeps chewing. The ash lends soft smoke. The honey hums like distant lutes. She finishes one, then another, lips tinted yellow. The steward trembles, waiting for a verdict. Maud, mouth half full, waves him away. Hours later, she orders a discreet ledger entry. 7 charitable pastries from pious friends permit 2 wagon loads of cedar out of gratitude. The priory's gamble pays. Yet word leaks. A kitchen boy boasts to the stable girl that Lady Maud ate forbidden sunshine. By dusk, every scullion, guard, and goose knows. Whispers become wagers. Will Maud lift the Saffron ban? Some cheer, others fear coughing custard ghosts. The tension is thick as last year's ale. While Middlecliff simmers, let's coast west to Ludlow Castle, where Earl Ranulph hosts a tournament. Knights clank, banners whip, and merchants hawk miracle tonics. None quite as curious as ash honey pills. They're marble small pellets rolled by a traveling apothecary named Isabeau. Her secret binder? Rendered goose fat, smoked hard with juniper. The pills promise clarity of mind and, more importantly, exemption from the Lenten flatulence plaguing armored men on a barley diet. Each pill costs a copper. Knights gulp them before the joust. Nobody wants to be unhorsed by their own digestive thunder. Isabeau learned the recipe from Moorish wanderers near Toledo. She toasts saffron stamens until brittle, pulverizes them into soot-fine powder with almond shell ash, then kneads the lot into honey and fat. The result resembles garnet-flecked peppercorns. Word of Brother Aldhelm's honey hearts has yet to reach Ludlow, but Isabeau's concoction is already weaving into the same honey ash mythology, a quiet web connecting kitchens from priory to palace via spice routes older than memory. Back at St. Botolph's, Aldhelm's apprentice, you remember, is scrubbing kettles when a pigeon scrapes against the window, leg burdened with a vellum scrap. It's Cuthbert from the scriptorium. His scribal duties have him illustrating a missal for the Earl of Pembroke's daughter, Lady Rossin, who allegedly faints at the sight of saffron after a childhood overdose. The Earl demands a gift, something sweet yet colorless, to prove the priory's delicate piety. Aldhelm paces. Remove the saffron, lose the magic, unless... Enter substitute, secret ingredient, hide 1, ground white poppy seed ash. It mimics saffron's subtle bitterness, but bleaches pale. Aldhelm experiments late into the night, adjusting honey ratios, whisper counting Ave Marias for luck. The first batch crumbles like tomb dust. The second spreads like porridge. The third, perfect. He christens them lily ash wafers, stamps them with a fleur-de-lis. You're tasked with delivery, disguised as a humble herb peddler. On the road, you meet walkabout minstrels who trade you a ballad about ash-baked love tokens for 2 wafers, thus scattering the recipe a little farther. Let's shift perspective. South to a Benedictine nunnery near Salisbury Plain. Sister Wulfgith, cellarer and clandestine gourmand, is knee-deep in her own sugar miracle. She received a honey heart smuggled in a salter margin, courtesy of St. Botolph's guestmaster who fancied her poetic annotations. One bite sent her on a quest to outsweet the monks. She adds powdered violet root for fragrance, spruce ash for bracing pine notes, then pipes the batter through a hollow reed's earliest medieval pastry bag to create spiral rosettes she calls heaven's curls. Pilgrims will walk barefoot miles for a pouch of them. With their alms, Wulfgith funds an infirmary expansion, claiming the Lord works through cravings. All these clandestine recipes swirl toward a showdown none foresee, the Lent-tide market fair at Leicester. Tradition demands each religious house present a table of humble fare, judged by the bishop's steward for conformity to austerity. But rivalries pulse beneath the cassocks. Monks from Croyland brag they've invented a vinegar-kissed rye wafer that makes sinners weep. Franciscans tout date-filled fig rolls crusted in ground oyster shell ash. It's culinary Cold War. St. Botolph's contingent rolls in with cedar crates of honey hearts, lily ash wafers, and, Aldhelm's latest brainstorm, Fire of Elijah drops. These are thumbnail lozenges made from honey clarified until glassy, then dusted in long pepper, oak ash for a tingle that creeps across the palate like a blessing turned goosebump. When placed on the tongue, they crack with faint thunder. Spectacle sells. But a shadow circles the fair, Inquisitor Brother Ponce d'Aubigny, whose austere gaze can curdle cream. He deems Saffron pride made visible, and suspects these sweets mask heretical indulgence. His ledger lists fines, 5 silver for colored confection, 10 for honey wine glazes, excommunication for ash flavored by diabolical herbs. He prowls stalls, sniffing suspect pastries. You, still apprenticed, spot him. Panic fizzles your gut like boiling mead. If he confiscates your crates, the priory loses cedar and reputation. So begins Operation Distraction. You enlist Isabeau, whose poppy ash pills have made her the tournament darling. She volunteers to stage a miracle cure demonstration near the Inquisitor's path. She swallows a pepper ash pill, feigns choking, then, voila, revives by proclaiming, "The Lord has mellowed my humors." The crowd gasps. Ponce hustles over, lectures about false miracles, drags Isabeau aside for questioning. While he's busy, you whisk the crates into the judging tent, register them under the alias Oblates of St. Lidwine, conveniently forgetting to mention Saffron. The steward tastes. His stern lips curl upward. The bishop, remembering Maud's recent generosity, notes the priory's name with a flourish. St. Botolph's wins most edifying sweet. Prize? A parchment granting free toll passage for their wagons, spice routes unlocked. Yet victory costs you. Ponce, released from Isabeau's fast talk enchantment, notices the distinctive quill-pierced heart emblem on empty wrappings. His suspicion targets St. Botolph's. He drafts a summons demanding an audit of priory expenditures and possible gluttony offenses. A courier departs at cockerel crow. You glimpse the seal and feel sweat pool down your spine. Aldhelm receives the letter days later. He reads, chuckles, then barks a laugh so booming the cloister rats freeze mid-scurry. Let him come, he says. We'll feed him humility baked in honey. His plan, invite Ponce for a Lington retreat, serve colorless lily ash wafers, preach moderation, then gift him a medicinal loaf laced not with saffron but soothing lemon balm ashes. Perhaps the Inquisitor's stern bowels simply need gentling. Behind the bravado, Aldhelm drafts ledger entries, fudging numbers. Honey purchased for wound salves, cedar for repairing orphan cribs, paper shields if flimsy. You realize the priory is now juggling politics hotter than any oven. One slip and the sweet network collapses. But sugar diplomacy rolls on. News drifts in. Lady Maud rescinds her saffron ban, citing new evidence of its medicinal ash synergy. She funds a hospice, ordering 200 honey hearts monthly. Brother Aldhelm's fame spreads as far as York, where alewives attempt honey ash stout. Results, dubious flatulence. Pilgrims adopt saffron ash sweets for road fatigue. Troubadours write cheeky verses comparing love to ash on honeyed lips, soft burn, slow fade. The culinary underground becomes a cultural rumor the way ivy becomes a wall's second skin. Of course, not all is glaze and roses. A Greyfriar in Lincoln claims he saw a child turn jaundiced from over-saffroned peace tea. A physician writes that charcoal residues sully the spleen. Town councils debate spice tariffs. Some call for total ban. Others propose tasting committees. Honey, once humble, now fuels economic fevers. And in the echo of every sermon, Brother Ponce's coming audit looms. Your dreams fill with parchment fires and crumbling cakes shaped like gallows. Yet dawn always brings the same choreography. Beat honey, sift ash, whisper prayers that tread the line between gratitude and greed. We'll cut candle flame short here. Your eyelids droop, and the choir of crickets outside your real window begs intermission. Next time, we'll witness the Inquisitor's arrival, the nun's marzipan incident that nearly sparked a Saffron riot, and the curious way a humble pigeon saved a bakery from heresy charges by vomiting golden crumbs at the bishop's feet. True story, mostly. Before you let the cat stretch across your lap and the candle gutters low, do the usual housekeeping. Click like the same way you'd tap a spoon against a mixing bowl. Whisper a comment, maybe your favorite midnight snack or the weather outside your window. And thump that subscribe bell so the algorithm slides fresh stories onto your bedside table each time you blink. Good. Draw the quilts closer. Tonight, the oven door swings open on the hottest chapter yet. The summons arrived wrapped in ecclesiastical red. Brother Ponce d'Aubigne's personal wax pressing of a skull and hourglass. Brother Aldhelm studied it in the refectory as steam curled from lunch pottage. Around him, the novices froze mid-spoon. An audit could strip St. Boltoffs of trading rights, slap fines heavy enough to starve the beehives, maybe even shutter the entire confection operation. Aldhelm's laugh, the one you heard last night, was mostly bravado. Now his eyes skimmed the parchment, weighing every ink stroke like a coin on a scale. Ponce would arrive in 10 days, entourage in tow, hungry for both truth and dinner. 10 days, Aldhelm muttered. We'll need clouds of innocence and a drizzle of distraction. That evening, you and the cellarer, Brother Pharamond, spread accounting rolls across a grain table. Candles pocked the wax with heat blisters. Outflow: 40 jars thyme honey, 20 pounds almond ash, 3 pounds saffron, cedar rent, wagon repair, bribes disguised as chores stall polishing oil. Inflow: meager. The numbers dripped guilt. Pharamond suggested forging entire new ledgers, but Aldhelm shook his head. Ponce sniffs fresh parchment like hounds sniff deer. We require something subtler: saints, smoke, and sugar. Enter Sister Wulfgith, the Salisbury innovator of Heaven's Curls, arriving unannounced before prime on a borrowed mule. She slipped through the cloister gate with saddlebags puffed round as wine casks. Inside lay pouches of violet ash rosettes and a scroll of bold proposal. A collaboration fair, nunnery and priory together, profits to charity. But the timing? Perfect, Aldhelm murmured. A holy alliance confuses auditors. If nuns praise us, Ponce must handle us with silk gloves. Wulfgith agreed, under one condition: inclusion in the upcoming Lent-tide market. Aldhelm clasped her forearms in pact. While monks debated theology in the chapter house, the true plotting took place in the bake-yard. There, Aldhelm revealed Stage 1 of Operation Humility. Substitute saffron entirely with calendula. The petals, when dried and ash-cured, glow a pale gold. Poor man's saffron, he explained. If Ponce tested sweets for banned spice, he'd find only harmless marigold traces. You and Wulfgith spent dawns snipping blossoms, roasting them atop embers until they curled like parchment shavings, then pounding them to dust with ash sifted from yew logs. The flavor, faintly peppery, lacked saffron's honey-hay aroma. Aldhelm compensated by caramelizing the honey longer, letting notes of smoke and toffee bloom. Batch after batch cooled on linen. By the 5th sunrise, even the beekeepers declared the new recipe a sin worth praying for. Yet rumors traveled faster than flavor. Word leaked that St. Bothol's had gone colorblind, abandoning golden sweets for dull beige poverty cakes. Pilgrims grumbled. Trade partners balked. Worse, Lady Maud, now loyal customer, dispatched a curt letter. If the hearts no longer shine, do not bother sending. Aldhelm exhaled through his teeth. We need saffron. Legality be hanged. But we can hide it better. Stage 2. Layered secrecy. Honey hearts would be cast in 2 halves. The inner core, no larger than a quail egg, would contain the illicit saffron ash mixture. The outer shell, a calendula veil. Bite one quickly and you saw only pale dough. Linger on the chew and subtle saffron bloom would whisper through. To craft such complexity, Aldhelm needed precision molds. The carpentry novice, Oswin, fashioned wooden presses lined with goose-fat parchment. All week the cloister smelled of cedar shavings and molten wax. While hammers clacked, Ponce's shadow lengthened on the road. His retinue, 5 friars, 2 bailiffs, and a scribe named Hugo, who chronicled each suspect crumb, camped at way stations, sermonizing on gluttony. Villagers grumbled that the audit train ate twice what it condemned. Rumor reached you that Hugo boasted a strange pet, a messenger pigeon with a ribbon of scarlet looped round its ankle. Delivers denunciations straight to the Archbishop's quill, Hugo bragged. The bird could upend everything with one flight. You, scarcely sleeping, hatched a plan. Intercept the pigeon, replace any damaging missive with praise. But catching church property meant excommunication if caught. Wulfgith volunteered. Nuns, she reminded, move ghost silent by rule. That night, she and you rode muleback to the hamlet of Deadman's Turn, final inn before Ponce's arrival. A moon clawed crowds as you crouched behind ale barrels. Inside, the scribe drank thin ale and fed crumbs to his bird perched on a cage. Wulfgith whispered verses while you crept, sliding a sliver of honey ash to distract the pigeon. The bird pecked, cooed, then dozed. In a heartbeat, Wulfgith unclasped the tiny leather tube fixed to its leg. Inside, a scroll. Preliminary note: St. Botolph's suspected of spice extravagance. Recommend seizure. Ice nipped your spine. Wulfgith produced fresh vellum, scribbled a forgery. Sampling of St. Botolph's fare reveals admirable austerity. Recommend commendation. You rolled it tight, replaced the tube, retreated into shadow. The bird slept on, unaware it had swallowed contraband sugar that would keep it docile till sunrise. At dawn, Ponce resumed his march. You and Wulfgith slipped home ahead, hearts drumming. 3 evenings later, the audit cortege clattered through the priory gate. Bells tolled a greeting sour as cider. Ponce dismounted, robes billowing like storm sails. He refused wine, asked for water. His eyes were flint slivers. Tour began in the apiary. Bees buzzed, unaware they balanced the priory's fate. Ponce queried hive yields, honey tithe, wax allocations. Oldhelm recited figures, rehearsed until they etched tracks on his tongue, careful to tie every jar to charity or medicinal poultice. Hugo scribbled, frownless, your altered pigeon note apparently holding. Next, the bake-yard. Trays of humble lily ash wafers awaited tasting. Ponce chewed carefully, lips pursed. Pleasant, he admitted, but do I detect saffron? Oldhelm's smile never wavered. Marigold, brother, calendula from our garden, behold. He pointed to beds blooming orange like sunset embers. Ponce plucked a petal, sniffed, reluctantly nodded. Then doom loomed, the storeroom. Barrels of spice, sacks of almond ash, cedar boxes. One sealed crate secretly cradled the saffron heart chores awaiting encasement tomorrow. Keys jingled. Ponce insisted on opening every chest. Sweat prickle-stitched your back. Wulfgith stalled by praising Ponce's scholarship, asking about his commentary on Leviticus. While he launched into lecture, Oldhelm signaled Oswin. The novice pried loose a floor plank behind Ponce's back. You and Oswin slid the saffron crate into the crawlspace, blanketed it with cobwebbed burlap. Board replaced, dust scuffed, evidence buried. Audit concluded with supper. Monks served pottage thin as repentance, rye bread dense as confession, and small bowls of ascetic drizzle, honey diluted in warm water. Ponce spooned, unimpressed, but found no fodder for censure. He retired to guest quarters where, by design, a draft shifted through cracks, making him wrap in blankets that smelled faintly of calendula. Subtle propaganda. At Matins' bell, catastrophe! Hugo's pigeon, or perhaps another, fluttered into the cloister garth, coughing up golden crumbs. Novices gathered, gasping. Ponce, woken by commotion, strode barefoot into dew-drenched grass. The bird staggered, vomited saffron-flecked paste onto his foot, then expired like a martyr. Hugo shrieked accusations. The priory poisoned God's messenger. Ponce's eyes glittered. Search every chamber. Chaos blossomed. Brothers scattered, sisters arrived to defend, guards barred gates. You realized the saffron cores beneath the floor had shifted during the night. The coffer's lid ajar, smell leaking. Ponce would find them. Time for final gambit. Remember the layered honey hearts? At dawn's first pink, you, Aldhelm, Wulfgith, and Oswin dragged the hidden crate into the bakeyard ovens. Not to destroy evidence, there wasn't time, but to finish the pastry. Within minutes, shells of calendula batter sealed around saffron centers, forming innocent-looking beige hearts. Aldhelm brushed each with skim milk wash to dull any golden glint. Cooling on racks, they appeared meek as monks. Search party burst in. Ponce seized one heart, snapped it open. To your horror, a thread of color glimmered at its core. Ponce's nostrils flared. He summoned Hugo to bear witness. Aldhelm steadied his voice. What you see is not saffron, but quinceed tincture cured in ash. Its virtue calms troubled stomachs. Ponce wasn't convinced. He ordered Hugo to taste. The scribe's hand shook as he bit. Saffron warmth spread across his palate. His eyes widened, but not in outrage. Delicious, he whispered involuntarily. The room held its breath. At that moment, Sister Wulfgith entered carrying the violet rosettes. She addressed Ponce. These are for your infirm mother, a token of our prayers. Ponce's stony face twitched. Word in epistolatory circles said his mother did suffer nightly chills. He accepted the box, suddenly unsure. Politics shifted. Condemnation risked seeming ungrateful. He cleared his throat. I will further test these confections under controlled prayer. Translation, he'd sample them himself first. That evening, Hugo slipped you a note. Your secret is safe. The bird's crumbs were from my own sample pilfered last night. Fear made me blame you. Forgive me. Relief poured like warm mead. Still, Aldhelm decided to cut the snakes' heads. He invited Ponce to officiate a charity feast 3 days hence, featuring plain bread, broth, and the new quince ash hearts. Ponce agreed. Public alignment now tied his reputation to the priory's piety. 3 days later, the feast unfolded before parish poor, traveling merchants, even Lady Maud. Curiosity overcame pride. She tasted a heart, recognized saffron ghosting through, but met Aldhelm's eyes and merely smiled, finger to lips. Ponce blessed the meal, praising humility. His own tongue glowed golden, yet he swallowed doubts along with crumbs. Crisis averted? Not yet. That night, in the dim scriptorium, Hugo penned a fresh letter to the Archbishop detailing suspicious pastry alchemy. You discovered him mid-ink, quill poised. He confessed greed, selling denunciations fetched silver. He'd planned to reveal the Saffron subterfuge once safely away. Outraged, you lunged, inkpot toppled, parchment blotted. A scuffle, hush. Then, from the rafters, the same pigeon's mate swooped down, snatched the blotched letter, flapped into darkness. Hugo howled, but evidence literally flew. Next day, the bird was found by shepherds miles away, parchment illegible under rain stains. Fate chewed the blackmailer's note into pulp. Hugo, fearing exposure of his profiteering, begged Aldhelm for sanctuary. Aldhelm agreed, under vow of silence and lifetime service in the apiary. In the weeks following, St. Bothol's sweets soared in fame. Pilgrims queued for quince hearts, peasants traded eggs for heaven's curls, and Maud shipped cedar without complaint. Ponce's audit closed with mild recommendations: reduce honey tithe by 1/4, increase almsgiving, easy marks. The priory breathed again. Yet you sense the wheel keeps turning. Spice lords in London hear of this saffron resurgence. Guilds plot monopoly. A royal envoy rides south seeking the golden medicine. Meanwhile, Sister Wulfgeth experiments with licorice charcoal glaze that writes scripture on wafer tops, edible literacy. And far across the channel, Moorish sailors arrive in Bristol with a purple spice that dyes dough twilight blue, already nicknamed Night Bloom Cinnamon. Snow melts sluiced through the cloister gutters the morning the royal barge moored at St. Botolph's Landing. The vessel's hull gleamed new oak and brass. The standard snapping overhead bore not only King Henry's rampant lion, but, ominously, the blue and gold chevrons of London's worshipful company of grocers. Their delegation advanced up the muddy track like chess pieces. Master Teague of the grocer's court, Lady Claricia the king's food tester, 2 scribes, 4 hard-jawed guards, and a steward cradling a lacquered lockbox. Word in the Shire said the court had tasted an imitation of our saffron ash heart and now demanded the genuine article or an explanation. Brother Aldhelm met them in the herb garden, robe hem damp, eyes bright behind practiced humility. You lurked just behind him, flanked by Sister Wulfgith and novice carpenter Oswin, your cabal, hearts hammering double time. Master Teague bowed with only the top third of his spine. "We are here for a demonstration," he announced, "and perhaps a revision of rights regarding exotic imports. Translation: sign contracts binding all future saffron flows to his guild or face royal confiscation." Aldhelm ushered the party to the bakeyard, now swept and hung with linen banners painted in harmless marigold yellows. The air smelled of honey scald and smoked quince. Brother Pharamond had prepared 3 sample platters, one of plain rye wafers, one of calendula hearts, and one of what he labeled penitential ash cakes, so dark they appeared burned. The saffron hearts, our real treasure, stayed cooling in the locked larder, cores still hidden. Lady Claricia, sharp-eyed despite her soft velvet cloak, tasted each wafer with a silver pick. She paused at the ash cakes, frowned thoughtfully, then asked, "Is this the flavor rumored to soothe His Majesty's gout?" Aldhelm dipped his head. Merely a humble mixture of almond ash and herb char. Clarissa lifted a brow, a court gesture meaning I am not yet convinced, but entertain me. Master Teague produced a parchment of monopoly rights ready for Oldhelm's seal. Sign, and the grocers will guarantee stable prices, significant alms for your charities. But our operation relied on grey market spice sourced through Moorish traders and Lady Maud's secret cedar convoys. Tie ourselves to Teague, and the priory would bleed profit while laboring under guild tithes. Oldhelm needed stalling tactics. He invited the delegation to Vespers in 2 hours, promising a tasting of our newest, sleep-blessed confection. That bought us a sliver of time. Back in the scriptorium, you, Wulfgith, and Oldhelm huddled over a crumb-pocked map of the priory, reckoning options. Wulfgith proposed an audacious substitution: fold a tincture of lavender suit into the saffron hearts, creating a fragrance so gentle even Clarissa would attribute its luxury to herbs, not forbidden spice. Oswin volunteered to modify the cooling racks to infuse smoke discreetly. Cedar chips beneath, linen canopy above, funneling scent without staining color. Risk stacked on risk, but without a taste that dazzled the court official, Teague's contract would strangle us. Oldhelm nodded. Operation Blue Sleep began. While Oswin drilled vent holes in the brick oven throat, you and Wulfgith decanted lavender oil into a basin of warm ash. The mixture shimmered like starlit ink. Carefully, you brushed each chilled saffron heart till it drank the essence. A hush hung in the bakeyard, broken only by bees wandering from their hives, drawn by the strange floral smoke. But spies pried everywhere. Young novice Everard, eager, impressionable, slipped away earlier that afternoon and was now seen whispering to one of the grocer guards near the granary. Wulfgith spotted them, tugged your sleeve. Panic ricocheted. If Everard spilled word of the saffron stash or the lavender gambit, the grocers could cry fraud before Vespers. Intercepting him risked causing more suspicion. Instead, you fetched Brother Pharamond, whose jovial manner could distract a saint. He joined the conspirators mid-whisper, wrapped an arm round Everard's shoulders, and steered both men toward the meadery for a restorative draught. Crisis diffused, for now. The bells tolled 8th hour. Monks processed into the candle-lit nave. Delegation followed, noses wrinkling at beeswax smoke. Gregorian tones swelled, echoing off stone ribs. Oldhelm delivered a homily on Proverbs, "Better is a dinner of herbs where love is, than a stalled ox with hatred." A pointed nod at the grocer's lavish retinue. After the Amen, the tasting commenced inside the chapter house, converted into a shadowy salon. Platters of lavender saffron hearts lined a long refectory board. Bowls of warm almond yolk custard waited for dipping. Oswin's cedar vents exhaled faint blue wisps. Moonlight through high windows painted the smoke silver. Lady Clarissa approached first, curiosity flickering. She chose a modest heart, split it, and a whisper of gold loosed from its core, followed by a bloom of lavender haze. She raised it to her lips, eyes half closing. Silence stretched. Finally, a soft sigh.
It melts like prayer. She beckoned Teague. He bit, and, to our disbelief, a smile cracked the granite lines of his jaw. This, he declared, surpasses Moorish marzipan.
The grocer's scribes scribbled. Teague cleared his throat to renegotiate. The Crown will levy only a modest duty, 10%, in exchange for exclusive supply contracts. Aldhelm had prepared a counteroffer, 5% with free shipments to royal hospitals. The haggle lasted 3 rounds. Wulfgith punctuated each pause by offering another pastry, the lavender subduing aggression like a gentle hand. Final accord, 7% duty, but the priory retained creative control and could sell freely at pilgrim markets. Victory, conditional on one last test.
Clarissa insisted on observing our kitchens at sunrise, unannounced. Transparency, she said. Aldhelm agreed, knowing we'd have to purge evidence overnight. You and Oswin hauled empty saffron pouches to the fire pit, feeding them to flames. Pharamond scrubbed tables till wood grain groaned. Wulfgith gathered leftover lavender ash, planning to compost it among calendula beds, scent disguising spice burial. Midnight. Catastrophe struck again. Everard missing. His pallet lay vacant. Footprints led toward the river. You guessed the truth. Guilt pricked the novice into second thoughts. Perhaps Teague's guard promised coin. If Everard reached the barge with confession, dawn audit would fail. You and Wulfgith saddled the mule and followed the reed-choked path. River fog swallowed starlight. At the landing, you spied Everard on the gangplank, parchment in hand. Whispered voices, Teague's men. Time sprinted. Wulfgith produced her secret weapon, a small terracotta flacon of concentrated lavender oil. She doused a kerchief, flung it over the guard's face. The man reeled, half dreaming. You seized Everard's elbow, hissed forgiveness if he returned. Tears streaked his cheeks. "I only wanted silver for my sister's dowry," he stammered. Wulfgith offered a deal. The priory would pay the dowry from honey profits if he swore silence. Shame softened, Everard nodded. Crisis contained again. Back at the priory, dawn glimmered. Clarissa arrived with minimal escort, brows brisk. She inspected storeroom barrels, sniffed ash pits, probed flour sacks. You displayed calendula stock and lavender beds. Oswin guided her through smoke vents, demonstrating innocent purpose, scenting vestments for feast days. Clarissa tasted raw calendula dust, sneezed, laughed. Harmless. Audit closed. She proclaimed St. Bolthoff's a beacon of moderate indulgence. Her final gift, a scroll of royal patronage, promising annual orders for lavender hearts during Advent. Teague departed, grumbling, but pocketing freshly negotiated import percentages. The lockbox remained unopened. Rumors said it held kingly gold for first shipment. Instead, he ordered it sealed until delivery. You suspected Teague feared tasting hearts in case addiction compromised his bargaining spine. Triumph should have tasted sweet, yet an undercurrent tugged. Dependence on royal palate meant scrutiny forever. Wulfgith leaned against a beehive, muttering, "We trade one chain for another." Aldhelm agreed, diversify or perish. Talk turned to the Moorish sailors rumored to bear night bloom cinnamon,
Perhaps a new ingredient would keep us a step ahead, one so unfamiliar no guild yet claimed it.
Preparations began for a secret mission. Brother Pharamond would lead a wagon to Bristol's docks under guise of wax sales. You would accompany, disguised as a lay brother, coin purse sewn beneath tunic. Wulfgith would remain, perfecting a stable lavender honey glaze and tutoring Everard, whose penitence now burned bright as sunrise.
On departure eve, Lady Maud arrived astride a dappled grey, cedar wagons rumbling behind. She congratulated Oldhelm, but her smile shadowed. "The Welsh marches boil," she warned. "Bandits sniff cedar like wolves. Your spice roads grow perilous." She offered extra guards, for a price, first rights to any new confections. Oldhelm counter-offered a share of future pilgrim revenue. They shook hands over mulled ale.
Night fell. You lay in the guest loft among wagon tarps, listening to bees drowse, lavender smoke curl through rafters, and distant bell strike Compline. Tomorrow's road promised thieves, sailors, and perhaps cinnamon blue as twilight. Your mind drifted, counting risks like sheep, royal inspectors, guild greed, novice betrayal, unknown spices, and that persistent pigeon, now fat and tame in the apiary, but still capable of flight if tempted.
Somewhere below, Oldhelm penned new formulas. Saffron plus lavender ash equals golden hush. Night bloom sin plus cedar smoke equals
Ink blot dried. He closed his eyes, whispering, "Lord, forgive our sugar-puffed subversions." Yet heaven seemed content to wink. After all, even saints crave a sweet dream now and then.
The cedar wagons rolled out of St. Botolph's before Lord's, clattering across frost-crusted ruts. Brother Pharamond sat up front, reins loose in mittened hands, whistling plain-song to steady his nerves. Beside him bounced Lady Maud's chief man-at-arms, Sir Rowan Cobble, a scar-smiled veteran who claimed he could smell ambush before birds did. Behind them lumbered 2 mules packed with beeswax, pilgrimage candles, and the true prize, a lockbox of honey hearts brushed with lavender ash. Royal samples for Bristol's Guildhall merchants. You rode third wagon, hood low, disguised as lay brother Athel, in case guild spies traced you. Your satchel, stitched beneath cloak lining, carried coin heavy enough to bend your spine. Payment for whatever spice the Moorish sailors called night bloom cinnamon.
Sister Wulfgith remained at the priory, training Everard to keep his quill honest and his mouth shut. Brother Aldhelm blessed the procession, whispering final counsel. Trade in truth where you can, in shadow where you must, and remember, the guild watches every lantern.
The first 2 days passed beneath pewter skies. Frost steamed off the horses at noon. Cedar scent mingled with breath and oat dust. Sir Rowan told tales to keep spirits up. One about a Welsh outlaw who stole a bishop's mitre and used it as a cooking pot. Pharamond laughed until tears froze on his beard. You kept tally of milestones, plotting potential bandit haunts marked on Maud's map. Turn Hollow, Badger's Felled Oak, Ashpike Ford. At dusk of the 3rd day, you reached Ashpike,
a stone bridge crossing a river black as treacle. Sir Rowan ordered torches lit. Water hissed where dripping resin met current. Mid-span, the lead horse bulked. In the torchlight, upriver, 3 boats nudged the bank, canvas folded like bat wings. Figures in dark jerkins stepped onto the shingle. Bandits. One raised a horn and blew a note flat as moldy cider. Rowan swung down, drew his arming sword, and shouted a warning that promised marrow-cracking pain. The bandits fanned, blades glinting. In that breath you realized the lockbox of honey hearts sat exposed on wagon 2. Pharamond clutched the reins, white-knuckled. You slipped from the bench, pulling the bee smoker Oswin modified, a cedar box stuffed with dried lavender heads and ember pan. One good puff could blind men long enough to flee.
Rowan roared, charged. Steel rang. Horse shrieked. You darted up, swung the smoker, squeezed bellows. A plume of lavender ash and sparks billowed. Bandits coughed, eyes watering. Rowan felled one with pommel blow, sliced another's belt, sending him mooning into the river. Chaos reigned 30 heartbeats. Then the horn blew again, this time retreat. Boats shoved off, half crew flailing, one with lavender soot painting his face ghost blue.
Pharamond exhaled so deeply the mule brayed in sympathy. Rowan wiped sword on grass, chuckled. Next time, brother, I'll take ash over arrows. Dawn smudged pink across the river, while you and Pharamond hammered new bolts into the wagon gate. None dead, honey hearts unshattered. Miracle tallied. 2 days later, the convoy crested the ridge above Bristol. Foggy chimneys poked like organ pipes. The River Avon curled silver, crowded with hulls. Masts looked like spears aimed skyward. You smelled tar, dung, and cloves. Guild banners flapped from stone towers. Somewhere among that tangle waited the Moorish caravel Starna del Alba with its rumored blue spice. Lady Maud's letter granted docking access. At the wharf, the harbor clerk, inky mustache, breath of onions, inspected your seals, waved you through. The sailors from Stjana were easy to spot. Indigo robes, wool caps stitched with copper moons. Their captain, Senor Ibn Yusuf Amal, introduced himself with a bow smooth as oil on marble. His English came flavored with Andalusian lilt. "I hear you seek the night that blooms," he said, tapping a cedar crate. "But you must taste dream before you price it." He led you below deck, where lanterns glowed violet through tinted glass. There, sacks of bark lay stacked like dragon scales, each shard shimmering faintly purplish. Amal pinched a sliver, crumbled it beneath your nose. Sun-sweet cinnamon scent, yes, but layered under? Cool mint at first, then whisper of anise, finally a drifting floral note reminiscent of midnight iris. The spice felt cold on your tongue, then warmed to honey fire. You pictured honey hearts swirling blue like twilight and felt shivers of potential. Negotiations unfolded atop a wine cask. Amal demanded twice the market rate of saffron. Pharamond balked. You counted with wax and cedar, plus a promise of exclusive distribution along pilgrimage routes all the way to Canterbury. Amal smiled like a merchant who loves a clever dance. He agreed, If you could solve a problem, his customs dossier was missing a royal tariff stamp. Without it, his cargo risked seizure by grocer officials. "Secure stamp," he said, "and 20 stones of night bloom are yours."
Sir Rowan groaned. Getting a tariff stamp meant appealing to the very guildmen you just outmaneuvered at St. Bothel's. But chance shimmered. Master Teague's junior officer, Aldred Pike, supervised Bristol Customs and possessed a weakness: high-stakes dice. Rowan, once a soldier in French campaigns, knew dice like psalms. Plan hatched. Rowan would invite Aldred to an evening game at Red Hare Tavern, wager a rare cedar box stuffed with hearts. If Rowan won, Aldred would produce the stamp out of embarrassment or greed. If Rowan lost, well, you'd owe a box of hearts, but perhaps still secure favor.
Night came. Tavern smoke thick as peat. Dice clattered on barrel lids. Rowan, in battered traveling cloak, played modest, losing small rounds to lure Aldred's purse swelling. You, dressed lay brother plain, circulated offering lavender hearts to watchers, subtle advertisement of St. Botolph's clout. In the final throw, Rowan bet the cedar chest, and, to Aldred's delight, appeared to roll snake eyes. Gasps. Rowan sighed, passed the chest across. Aldred pried the lid, inhaled glaze fumes, pupils dilated. He bragged he'd present the hearts at a guild banquet tomorrow, if only he had a worthy parchment story. Rowan leaned close, whispered that a tariff stamp on exotic bark would seal his evening as legend. Aldred, in intoxicated vanity, fetched his guild seal then and there, pressing wax on Armel's import scroll, while tavern crowds cheered his largesse.
Rowan winked at you. Victory disguised as loss. Aldred stumbled off, chest under arm, singing psalms off key. You and Rowan hand-delivered the stamped scroll to Amal before dawntide. The Andalusian grinned, loaded 20 stones of bark on your wagon, and gifted a tiny jade phial of condensed night bloom oil for the first glaze. Mission half done, yet a storm brewed in the guild hall. Mid-morning horns blared. Teague himself, still lurking in town, discovered Aldred's unauthorized stamp. Enraged, he accused Amel of bribery, ordered guards to impound the bark. Rowan intercepted you at Fish Market. Guild riders head for your wagon. The cargo sat at Lady Maud's leased warehouse by the quay, unprotected except by a shackled padlock and an aging clerk. Desperation lit your veins. You, Pharamond, and 2 of Maud's guards sprinted through alleys. Fishmongers cursed, gulls scattered. Turning a corner, you saw guildmen already at the warehouse gate, crowbars flashing. Behind them, Everard, the novice, thin and book-clutching, had arrived from the priory on urgent errand, bearing a rolled charter Aldham sent, a royal ratification of the new duty terms, secured earlier by Lady Clarissa. But the guildmen grabbed Everard, accusing him of forgery. You couldn't brandish swords, they'd label you bandits. Instead, recalling Lavender Smoke's chaos, you tugged the bee smoker from your pack, filled it with scrap bark slivers and lavender crumbs, sparked it. Purple smoke billowed, fragrant and disorienting. Guards coughed, eyes watering. Everard ducked, rolling clear. Maud's men pushed forward, forming barricade. In the confusion, Pharamond unlocked the gate. You and Everard heaved bark sacks onto the cedar wagon, covering them with beeswax sheets. City constables arrived, recognized Maud's coat of arms, and paused.
She outranked the guild in local patronage. You thrust Aldhelm's charter at the constable, wax seals unbroken. He read, nodded grimly, ordered guildmen to stand down. Teague's fury echoed like a kettle drum, but he retreated, vowing appeal to the king's court. For now, cargo safe. That night, rain drummed the warehouse roof. You brewed test syrup, honey, lavender ash, a shaving of night bloom oil. The mixture swirled from amber to deep indigo, smelling of cinnamon stars. Drizzled on a cooled heart, it set like stained glass midnight. Tasting, you felt warmth unfurl behind eyes, then a calm hush, like standing outside under new moon sky, far from buzzing thoughts. Pheromone's lips parted in awe. If pilgrims eat this, they'll sleep like cradle-rocked babes. He coined the name Midnight Honey. The road home beckoned, but dangers multiplied. Guild petitioners, potential royal summons, bandits aware you carried a spice fortune. Lady Maud assigned extra spearmen. Rowan plotted routes zigzagging lesser lanes, trading speed for secrecy. Everard, chastened, pledged loyalty. He'd glimpsed the guild's greed and chose monastic chaos instead.
5 dawns later, the convoy neared St. Botolph's, rain-slicked ruts shining. Bees swarmed in greeting as if sensing new nectar. In the bakeyard, Wulfgith rushed forward, hair smudged with flour. "We finished the script wafer experiments," she announced, holding a wafer etched in charcoal letters. "Peace be unto weary hearts." She stared at the indigo bark sacks with evangelist zeal.
Aldhelm stepped out, relief washing his features. But joy cut short. At his heel stood a courier bearing sealed parchment, crest of the king's privy council. You cracked the seal. It summoned Aldhelm to court in 3 weeks to explain recent disruptions in spice regulation. Teague's vengeance, quick-inked. Silence settled like ash. Then Aldhelm's smile crooked. "So, we take the mountain to court and feed it biscuits." He tapped the midnight glaze bowl. "We will craft a dream so gentle, even ministers nod." Preparations would stretch every brain and beehive. The priory courtyard buzzed louder than the hives. Every barrel, spoon, and scripture scrap had become part of Operation Sleep the Court. Brother Aldhelm ruled the schedule like a choir master, calling out times in bell tones. Malt mixing at prime, glaze whipping before terce, sigil stamping after none. Everard and his novice crew etched calming psalms onto parchment ribbons that would wrap each honey heart. Wulfgith supervised the baking trench, stirring cauldrons of indigo glaze with a boat oar. You, still masquerading as Brother Athel when strangers visited, managed spice inventory like a battlefield quartermaster, counting shards of nightbloom bark while Sir Rowan drilled the guards in non-violent intimidation posture, which mostly meant standing broad-shouldered so guild snoops thought twice. Lady Maud rode in at dawn 2 days later, cloak plastered with road dust, to deliver last-minute news. The king's privy council had advanced Aldhelm's hearing. Instead of 3 weeks, you had 5 days. The new venue? Windsor Palace, during the summer assizes, meaning every guild master, bishop, and board noble would be present, all eager for spectacle. Maud's eyes glittered with mischief. "If we can make half those dignitaries drift into a happy stupor," she said, "the crown will beg for crates, and the guild will choke on its own envy." Urgency crackled through the priory like candle wax fire.
Night after night, the bakers experimented. Batch 21 melted before cooling. 22 hardened into purple granite. Finally, on batch 27, the ratio clicked. 1 dram night bloom oil, 3 drops lavender essence, 2 spoonfuls honey reduced past the thread stage, all whisked into ash sugar until the glaze shone like moonstone. When brushed over the still warm hearts, it bled downward in streaks that resembled a star-studded sky, then set with a soft shell that dissolved the instant it touched the tongue. Wulfgith bit one, closed her eyes, and promptly sagged against the table. 10 minutes later, she woke murmuring, "Dreamt I was floating above wheat fields. No worries, no tax ledgers. Make more." Success.
Transport posed a riddle. The glaze melted above cool room temperature. Rowan proposed a nightly escort at dawn, wagons covered with damp linen and shaded by canvas awnings. Pharamond suggested adding beeswax-sealed clay pots of melted snow to keep interior air chilled. Everard designed inventory parchments coded in Latin abbreviations, so if guild spies intercepted them, they'd think the cargo held sacred vellum trimmings. The eve of departure, Oldhelm gathered the core team: Maud, Rowan, Wulfgith, Pharamond, Everard, and you inside the scriptorium. Candles flickered over scrolls. Tension smelled like nettled tea left too long. Oldhelm unfurled the Privy Council summons. "The Guild will press 3 charges," he said. 1. Unlawful importation. 2. Fraudulent tariff endorsement. 3. Sedition, implying we intend to disrupt the Crown's revenue. We must counter with sweetness and scripture.
He outlined the plan. Present midnight honey hearts to the council as diplomatic gifts. Then read a brief homily on rest as divine right. As listeners relaxed, Lady Maud would unveil a charter proposing a royal monopoly, taxed in the crown's favor, yet managed by the priory, thus turning the guild's greed into royal income. But the pivot, Oldhelm stressed, hung on the heart's effect. They had to lull the hall into serene receptivity without rendering the king unconscious, lest rivals claim poisoning. You were assigned dosage calibration. Armed with a sandglass and Sir Rowan's bravest soldier volunteers, you tested half-heart increments until the subjects reported gentle drift, but ears still working. The optimum, 1 full heart per adult, consumed with warm spiced milk to accelerate absorption. Side effects: mild violet tongue, temporary urge to hum lullabies. Departure morning dawned pearl gray. 2 wagons creaked southward. The first laden with chests of hearts nested in straw, flanked by armed guards. The second carried beeswax candles, parchments, and a portable brazier for ceremonial warming. Oldhelm rode a mule named Glimmershine, muttering sermon notes. You sat beside the chests, counting your pulse every milestone.
3 leagues from Windsor, problems galloped up. A column of guildmen blocking the toll lane, banners snapping. At their head, Master Teague himself, armor polished, sneer sharper than sword. "By warrant of the Chancellor," he barked, "all cargo from St. Botolph's is subject to inspection."
His men brandished pikes.
Sir Rowan rode forward, helm off, grin easy. "Good morrow, Teague. Inspect away, but mind the Queen's highway laws. You break, you buy." Teague's lip curled. He signaled inspectors. They pried open a chest. The first heart gleamed indigo. An inspector sniffed, eyes glazing. Teague slapped the lid shut, wary of sorcery. "Spice contraband," he declared. "Seized."
Oldhelm, calm as Psalm 23, produced a parchment bearing the royal clerk's counterstamp acquired via Lady Maud. "Our charter supersedes guild license," he said. "Challenge it in chamber, not on road." Teague sputtered, but dared not defy royal wax in public view. He withdrew, muttering, "See you in the hall." The convoy rolled on.
Windsor loomed, grey walls crowned with pennants, moat sparkling. Guards at the Lion Gate checked documents, waved you to the outer bailey. Stable boys whisked beasts away. Servants guided you through echoing corridors to a small chapel repurposed as hospitality chamber. Noon bells rang, and the council assembled in the great hall. Long trestle tables under hammer-beam ceiling painted with constellations. On dais, the king, Henry III, gaunt, eyes shadowed by sleepless governance. Beside him, Chancellor Mortcombe, a hawk of parchment and power. Bishops clustered like doves around grain. Guildmasters in velvet. Teague front row glowering. Nobles fanning themselves with peacock feathers. You wheeled in a cedar cart draped in linen, embroidered with bees and stars. Ceremony commenced. Heralds announced petitions, clerks droned charges. When Aldhelm's case called, whispers fluttered. He stepped forward, robe impeccable, Everard carrying silver tray of hearts. Pharamond followed with ewer of warm milk, scented with clove. Aldhelm bowed, spoke clear. "Your Majesty, ministers, brethren, travelers know the tyranny of wakeful nights. We bring a remedy born of prayer, hearth, and honest trade, the midnight honey heart." He gestured. Everard lifted lid. Indigo sweets glimmered like captured dusk. An audible sigh rippled through the hall. Oldhelm narrated the pilgrim origins, the lavender ash, the night bloom spice, lawfully procured under charter, subtle jab at Teague. He quoted scripture, "He giveth his beloved sleep." Then he invited tasting. Protocol allowed royal tasting only after a food taster. The royal almoner, wary, selected Teague as volunteer. Sweet justice. Teague paled, but couldn't refuse. He took a bite, chewed, eyes flickered, shoulders lowered. He remained upright, clearly unharmed, but softened. Next, the king's taster tried one, nodded approval. The king accepted a heart paired with milk. Silence stretched. He chewed slowly, inhaled steam. His eyelids half fell, then steadied. A faint smile touched his lips. Rare event, scribes later noted. Clergy sampled, murmuring blessings. Guildmasters, not to be upstaged, reached for hearts. Soon the hall smelled of cinnamon lavender. Conversation softened, edges smoothed. Rowan, stationed at rear, whispered timing cues. After 8 minutes, peak calm, Lady Maud rose, unfurling the new charter. "Your Majesty, We propose a royal patent licensing midnight honey across the realm, tithe dedicated to infirmary beds and veteran pensions. She laid out numbers. Projected revenue surpassed wine tariffs by Easter. Chancellor Mortcombe, usually stone-faced, considered while absently humming. He asked about supply chain security. Oldhelm answered with plan, Priory Guild partnership, all bark imports stamped by both Crown and Church, preventing smuggling. Maud slid a purse of honey-glazed coin prototypes, gilded tokens scented with bark, to show marketing potential. The king's interest sparked. He summoned his treasurer. Whispered math ensued. Opposition attempted one last volley. A rival guildmaster claimed the heart's color signaled witchcraft. Wulfgith stepped forward, produced ledger of ingredients, demonstrated glaze by dipping a fresh heart in warmed mixture, reciting each component aloud. She offered the heart to the bishop, who blessed it, bit in, and declared, "Tastes like the Psalms feel." Laughter broke tension. Objection withered. Voting followed. Nobles raised feathers. Clergy lifted croziers. Guild masters reluctantly nodded. The patent passed. The king ratified with B-shaped seal and, before anyone could rescind, decreed a royal day of rest to launch the product, meaning the crown now publicly endorsed sleep as holy gift. Teague's jaw tightened so hard you feared it might crack. After adjournment, the king requested more hearts for the royal nursery, explaining his heir suffered colic of worry. Oldhelm promised immediate delivery. As you wheeled the cart toward the exit, Teague blocked path. But instead of fury, he looked tired. "I tasted peace," he said hoarsely. "I'll buy crates at fair price." You extended a heart. He accepted, eyes glossy. Bullies disarmed by kindness, unanticipated victory. That night, Windsor's guest wing glowed candle-soft. The Priory team feasted on roast capon, pottage, and honey beer. Rowan sang a bawdy tavern riff until Maud threatened him with a ladle. Everard unveiled a poem comparing glaze streaks to angel wings. Oldhelm, unburdened, fell asleep mid-sentence, nose in goblet. You slipped outside to courtyard. Summer sky strewn with stars. Air smelled of lilies and distant chimneys. You tasted a half-heart, letting calm seep deep. Weeks of plotting, baking, and road fighting finally behind. Tomorrow, new hurdles. Scaling production, training merchants, guarding spice routes. But tonight, stillness. Footsteps behind. Wulfgith, cloak wrapped tight. She handed you the jade phial nearly empty. "Save last drops for darkest roads," she whispered. You nodded. "Thank you for believing dreams can be baked," she laughed. "Dreams are dough. Knead gently, they rise." Back at St. Boltolph's days later, wagons unloaded bark into storerooms. Novices stomped grapes for honey wine. Scribes drafted agreements. Pilgrims arriving for the feast of St. Swithin found bunks scented with lavender and bedside trays of midnight honey hearts. Reports spread. Travelers slept through thunder. Mothers asked for crumbs to soothe infants. Even monks prone to midnight math surrendered to gentle slumber. Everard compiled testimonies into a codex titled Somnia Dulcis, Sweet Dreams. Lady Maud's revenue soared. She funded orphan bread kitchens. Rowan accepted a quiet captaincy over caravan security, swearing the road to Andalusia would be safest in Christendom. Teague, surprisingly, fulfilled contracts, his guild pivoting to supply cedar boxes lined with bee cloth. One sunset, Aldhelm gathered everyone in the priory garden. Bees bobbed among foxgloves. He raised a honey hot, glaze twinkling. We sought to help pilgrims sleep, yet found ourselves awake to greater calling, turning suspicion into rest, rivalry into partnership. He toasted skyward. You bit into your heart, flavors unfolded, lavender ash, night bloom, faint echo of bridge battle smoke. Peace tasted complex, forged by struggle. Dear listener, your eyelids may weigh heavy now. Let the honeyed calm settle. Think of cedar wagons creaking home under constellations, of lavender smoke drifting over river, of a king smiling faintly in candlelight. History is a quilt of small mercies stitched by weary hands. Tonight, tuck yourself beneath its indigo patch, breathe deep, and drift. If this 7-part journey sweetened your thoughts, scribble "honey slept" below, share it with a restless friend, and keep